by Keith Conniford, the Registrar and CEO at the Hair and Barber Council, and he's going to be sharing what you need to know about the latest updates on the coronavirus safety guidance, how the new socialising rules throughout the UK will affect your business, the rules on track and trace, and a new COVID-19 app that's launching on the 24th of September. So it's great to have you with us today, Keith.
Lovely. Thanks, Laura. Thanks for having me with you.
Oh, fantastic. Well, should we maybe kick off just by you kind of telling us a little bit about the Hair and Barber Council and what you've been doing to help the industry during lockdown and the help that you're offering to the industry now and beyond?
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. Well, the Hair and Barber Council, just to give you a very quick overview, is a fairly unusual organisation in terms of its status. It's a statutory authority set up by a Government Act of Parliament. And the Act of Parliament, which is held by the name of the Hairdressing Council, which is actually our organisation name, but we trade as the Hair and Barber Council. It gives us the, if we like, we're the guardians of the act, of this particular Act of Parliament for our industry, for hairdressing and barbering. And within that, we hold and develop and obviously protect the register of professional hairdressers and barbers in the United Kingdom. The register at the moment is voluntary, subject to certain criteria if people wish to join. And what we're looking to do is to make that mandatory in the future. So to regulate the industry in short, and to raise the perception of the industry, the professional integrity and the perception of the industry, to not just the industry, but to politicians in particular, and obviously the customers, the public as well. So we're fairly unusual in our status. We're not a corporate company or anything like that. We are not for profit. So any money or any income we get is all used to develop what we're trying to do in terms of getting the industry regulated. And I'd like to say we're closer now than we've ever been, although obviously with Brexit and now with COVID, that's put a lot of it sort of a fair way back, unfortunately. So I hope that sort of gives you an idea of what we're about.
Fantastic. And I bet you've been super busy during lockdown and beyond. So how have you been helping hairdressers and barbers over the past few months?
Well, what happened was, I mean, I think when we were first locked down on the 23rd of March, none of us, myself included, had any idea of how this was going to go. You know, a lot of people thought, you know, might be for a few weeks and then we'd be out of it and, you know, everything would get back to normal. Well, clearly that is not the case, and certainly won't be for some time in the future. Please God, it's not too long, but who knows? And I think that's the problem. I think the problem the industry's had as a whole, and us as individuals, is that it's very hard to plan when you don't know what's going to happen. So what we set out to do from the 23rd of March was to obviously support our members in the very best way we can, in terms of giving them the information they require, the stuff that's coming out of government, to try and put some clarity with it, because there was so much confusion and still is on certain things. So to try and, if you like, cut through the chaff and to give people, you know, clear, accurate guidance that wasn't ambiguous and didn't have any confusion built into it. We decided to obviously do that for our members, because obviously our members are the people that support us, and that includes our corporate members and associate members as well, and our affiliates. But also I took the decision that it was an industry-wide issue, problems that we're all going to hit no matter whether they're members or not. So we took the stance at that time that we would support the whole industry as well as our members, and that's what we've tried to do.
Fantastic. And what help can your members get from you at the moment?
Well, I mean, obviously as a membership organisation, we do sort of the usual things that you would expect of us, you know, sending out newsletters, information, various sort of offers we put out to our members and so on and so forth. But the main, if you like, stance of what their membership helps us to do is to progress this this campaign, this fight in some ways with government, to try and get them to recognise our industry in the professional capacity and status it should be, to actually regulate the industry in the forward for a whole host of benefits, one of which would have been, we'd have been in a much stronger position with this virus, with this pandemic. Had we been a properly regulated industry, we'd have been in a lot stronger position to be able to sort of link with government and, you know, fight with them on a much more sort of professional basis, in terms of them listening to us much more than I believe they've done as far as we've gone as yet. But in saying that, we have been quite close to government. Thankfully, I've got a very good close contact with several senior politicians and ministers, and we have been able to sort of enact quite a lot of help and support through that to actually help the industry moving forward.
Brilliant. And obviously there has been a lot of confusion with coronavirus safety guidance and the rules, which are constantly changing. And we know how close you are to working with government. So it would be amazing to get your insights and your knowledge and to kind of dispel any myths during this session. So by all means, anybody watching, do feel free to ask any questions live to Keith, and I'm sure you will try to answer it if you do know the answer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But so there has been a bit going on over the past week or so. So should we maybe kick off with the rule that was changed yesterday in terms of socialising with no more than 6 people, and how that varies across the UK and what effect that might have on hairdressers and barbers?
Okay, well, I'm hoping, and this is only my own personal view, I'm hoping it won't have too much of an impact, because as we know, it's the rule of 6. And rule of 6 is another problem that we've got within the United Kingdom, that all the, if you like, the recommendations, the advice, and indeed the laws come out from Westminster for England. And then the devolved nations of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland obviously put their own stance to it. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it makes it very, very confusing. So, I mean, for example, if you take, indoors, meeting indoors at the moment, in England, it's 6 from multiple households from the 14th of September. I think we all know that. It's a maximum of 6. If you've got a family, for example, we have our youngest daughter and son-in-law have 4 children. So therefore they are 6. So technically, when this kicks in, we won't be able to mix with them. Well, it has kicked in. We won't be able to mix with them.
No, because they're already there 6.
They're already there 6. So, that's putting a lot of pressure on a lot of people. Now, you take that to Scotland and it's still 6, but aged 12 and upwards. So, for example, if you've got, say, for example, with our case, 4 of the children are below 12. So if we were in Scotland, their bubble would only be 2. So they could mix with us 2 and another 2. And so on and so forth. Then you've got in Wales, you've got 2 meters, up to 30. Sorry, I'm looking at outdoors, apologise. Up to 6 people and 12 plus from an extended household. So they put a slightly different slant on that, and then 6 people from 2 households in Northern Ireland. So it's these type of things that do make it complicated. Now, fast forward that to our industry. Hospitality obviously has got to deal with this as well, because when they were allowed to open, you could go to a restaurant. We were in a restaurant last Friday. There was a table of 8, not too, obviously 2 meters away, but not too far away. They won't be able to do that as of now. They've got to be working with 6 and 2 if it was 8 or something like that. Now, within our industry, I mean, I'm hoping it won't have too much of an impact, because we don't get 6 people walk into a hairdressing salon all at one time, all together. So, and I think the great work that the industry has been doing since we were allowed to open on July the 4th, I believe, they've taken all the precautions, the health and safety, the sanitising, the PPE, which has been a bit of a nightmare to deal with, to be honest, very, very seriously. So I think that the industry won't be impacted, hopefully, too much by this at all. We're already socially distancing. We're already doing everything we can with regard to protecting our staff, customers, and indeed ourselves. So I'm hoping this rule of 6 won't impact our industry anywhere near like it will a lot of others.
That's good to know, Keith. And from a freelance point of view, if you're a freelancer and you go into people's homes, I guess this rule of 6 will mean you can't go into a home that already has the 6 people in it.
Absolutely, yes. Again, there's not been any specific guidance on that, but yes, I would say that would be the case. And even if you were going into a home, and you have been since July the 4th, which you've been perfectly entitled to do, and we put out on our back to work plan some specific, if you like, recommendations to mobiles freelancers that do go into people's homes about what precautions they must take pre-going in, and obviously whilst they're in there, and obviously coming out. Not just for them, but for the householder as well, to sort of have things in place. Now, it was recommendations. We're not in a position to mandate it, but I think providing everything is taken into account, then everybody should be safe. But you're right, 6 people, if they, for example, take my family's position again, they couldn't have anybody in to do their hair.
No, yes. So, and that, I guess that would be, even if somebody was out of the house, that would still count.
Well, it's a grey area. That was a grey area, to be honest, because you could say, well, there's 6 living there, but 4 go out for a walk around the park or something. So there's only 2.
Yeah.
So technically, there's not 6 in the house. I think you'd have to be a bit careful on that. I can't give you a specific on that, Laura, because there's no guidance on it.
Okay.
But I think, to be safe, I think I would stick to the rule of 6. I
Right.
think,
So if it's a household of 6, you shouldn't be going there
I don't think you should. I don't think you should. But that's me saying that. That's not a formal, something coming from government. The problem with all of this is that the government, and let's face it, they've got an immeasurable task they're trying to deal with at the moment. And they put out things that they feel is right for us moving forward: health, safety, hygiene, and so on. But of course, they can't possibly think of every variable. And that's where the problem happens, because there's so many variables to every rule they put out. And that's where the problems come. And that's where the confusion comes. So we've done our best, if you like, to sort of eke our way through that, to try and give the clarity that's needed. But there are some things that even at the moment, I would honestly say to you, I'm not 100% sure on, because the clarity isn't there.
Definitely. So from your perspective, the rule of 6, it will mostly affect freelancers, really, as opposed to...
I think it could, on that basis. But again, there is no, I have to stress this, Laura, there's no formal guidance on that, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
So, somebody could argue, well, there's 6 of them, but 4 of them have gone out, so there's only 2, so what's the problem?
But then equally, I know it's different in all the different nations, but in England, the rule of 6 applies inside the house and outside, doesn't it? So even if you want
Absolutely right. And that's really important, because it's 6 inside and outside. And again, that varies on the devolved nations.
Yeah.
For example, in Northern Ireland, it's up to 15 outside and 6 from 2 households inside.
Yeah. So if you're in Northern Ireland and you're a freelancer, you could potentially do that person's hair if it's a nice sunny day like it is today outside.
But this is where the confusion comes. And to be fair to our industry, they've taken it so seriously overall that they're genuinely concerned about this. And I can't tell you how many phone calls, messages, emails asking for clarity on exactly points like this, because they're taking it seriously. It's not they're thinking, oh, blow it, I'll just go and do it. They are taking it really seriously, and they want clarity. They want to do the right thing. And we're doing our best to make sure we can give them as much clarity as we can.
Definitely, which is we all really appreciate, Keith. So thank you very much for explaining the rule of 6 with us, because obviously that did come into effect from yesterday. So
that's right, it was yesterday. That's right.
Yes, so if you are a freelancer and you're working in people's homes, that will apply from now moving forwards.
Well, I believe it will.
Yeah.
I must caveat that, that I can't say that officially, but I think it probably will.
Brilliant. And then we spoke briefly before our session, Keith, about the importance of risk assessments.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about it from your point of view, and how critical risk assessments are, regardless of what the coronavirus guidance is?
Yes. I think it is critical. Well, I believe it to be critical. Just to sort of backtrack a little bit, with all the new rules with PPE and sort of the government guidelines that most people were adhering to. Unfortunately, there's always a few that don't, but government tasked, and not just in our industry, by the way, they tasked the local authorities, through the majority of the local authorities, through the Trading Standards Department, to police, check and make sure that we're all following the rules. And I can tell you, in the area I live, there's a couple of towns that the trading standards have been very vigilant in going out, checking that people are following the rules. And so then take it back to risk assessments. When the whole coronavirus pandemic hit and we were told that we could open on July the 4th, and luckily we did have about 2 weeks notice that presumably that was going to happen. You had all these back to work plans that were sent out by us and other industry organisations as well. But risk assessments did actually feature as a very key element to this, because risk assessments are needed for you to run your business anyway. But it became even more important with regard to the coronavirus pandemic and all the hygiene regulations, PPE and so on. Now, even more so, if trading standards come in and want to check you, there's a good chance they'll ask to see your risk assessment. And I think to maintain your own safety and comfort with this, a risk assessment is really critical to have done, because it shows these people, anybody that comes in, that you have taken the whole thing seriously. You have done a detailed risk assessment. They don't have to be complicated, by the way, but a detailed risk assessment of what the risks are in the salon, whether those risks can be eliminated or not, and if they can't, what you have done to sort of bring those risks down as much as you possibly can. Because at the end of the day, you can only do as much as you can do. You can only follow the guidelines that are sent out to the very best of your ability, i.e. with PPE, and we'll probably come on to that in a minute, and safeguard your staff and your customers in the same way to the very best of your ability. Now, that's become more critical with the pandemic because of the hand sanitizing, the cleaning the workstations in between each customer, what you're doing about towels, gowns, and so on. So all these things should be in your risk assessment, because then somebody comes in and asks to see it, you can quite legitimately point out to them that you have taken the whole thing seriously. And I'm sure many, many, many people in our industry have, in fact, the majority I'm sure have. But it becomes even more critical when things are changing so quickly with regard to the guidelines. And we know we've had to change with PPE, which I said we'll come on to in a minute. And also, the various things we're now talking about, the apps and the COVID app and so on, track and trace.
So regardless of keeping up to date with the rules and staying as up to date as you can, make sure you've got your risk assessment in place and you are following that precisely, because I guess that will cover you on all fronts, won't it?
Well, I mean, if I was trading standards and I spoke to any business, not just our industry, and said, I'd like to see your risk assessment, if I can see it that you've obviously taken the time and the care to do it, then I know that you're doing everything you can to support the government, your staff, your customers, in making sure that everybody's safe. I'm not saying it would protect you against everything, but it certainly would give anybody that comes in the thought that, these people are really taking this seriously. I mean, they'll be able to see a lot of it anyway, with partitioning up or what you're wearing PPE.
Very visible, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, but I've always thought risk assessments are really critical even before this, because you should be assessing any potential risk to your staff and your customers within your business, no matter what business it is, and mitigate what you're trying to do about it and try to sort of avert those risks to the best of your ability.
Definitely. So anybody tuning in, that's something to think about if you haven't done so already, which you should have done, but is make sure you've got your risk assessment up to speed and based on all the rules and guidance. Before we move on to the PPE updates, which I'm sure everyone is desperate to talk about, it's a hot topic as always. We have had a few questions come in, Keith. Natalie Crank has said she has an education event coming up in a few weeks in her salon. Should she be taking it online because they had were going to have more than 6 people attending?
Yeah, that's quite a tricky one. I mean, let's think what the rule of 6 is about. It's about the rule of 6 in any one premises. Now, originally, when this first came out, it was in people's homes, if you recall, right? They didn't actually initially state in business premises or anything else. I would suggest that if they're doing an educational event and they've got, let's say, 20 people coming, or whatever that figure is, I think they should take it virtually. So because you're putting more than 6 people together in one place. And it's, I mean, it's slightly controversial, because you could say that in a restaurant, you get a group of 6 people, well, providing they're 2 meters apart, they're socially distancing, that group of 6, they're going to have other people in other parts of the restaurant doing the same thing. So could you do that in a hairdressing salon? But the rules are clear. It's the rule of 6. So I would suggest it would be better for us to do it virtually.
Fantastic. And we've just had another question come in. I can see this session, Keith, we're going to have quite a few questions coming in.
That's fine. That's fine.
Sarah has just said, wedding hair and makeup, how many can I have in a room? Is it still 6 on a wedding day?
Rule of 6. I think that's what you've got to have in your mind. Now, whether you agree with it or you don't, and I mean, at the moment, children are included in this, under 12, as you know. There is talk, and I heard something on the news this morning, that they're really battling to get that changed. There's quite a backlash, I believe, from some MPs to have it reduced from, not including children in it, which would obviously give a little bit more flexibility. But at the moment, it is the rule of 6. And I think you have to take that on board. There will be some variables. There will, and this is probably one of them. But I think if you're talking about 6 people in a room or a hotel room or somebody's home, it's the rule of 6. You can't have more than 6 people there.
And that is including yourself. So for instance, Sarah, who's doing wedding hair and makeup, she could only then have 5 people in that room with her.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I don't think if she did the hair for the 5 and then they moved to a different room or cleaned the room and then had another 5 in, I think that would probably work okay.
Yeah.
And these are the variables that I'm talking to you about, Laura, that the government haven't got to grips with. And this is where the confusion starts. And this is where people get worried. I mean, two people we've just been speaking to, they're obviously very professional. They want to make sure they're doing the right thing.
100%.
And some people don't do the right thing because they don't realise they're doing the wrong
thing. Yeah.
Because of the confusion with this. But, you know, let's tap into the rule of 6. That is it. In one place, one room, one house. The rule of 6.
Brilliant. And do feel free to ask us some more questions. We are getting a few questions on goggles and on track and trace. So maybe, rather than specifically answering their questions, maybe we can start chatting about those topics.
Yes.
So should we maybe start on the updates to PPE that were announced on Friday, which did announce that you could swap goggles for a face visor and goggles could be swapped, but no matter what, you've got to wear your mask.
Yes, you're right. Where that came from, I don't know initially. Who suddenly came up with that idea in government? I have no idea. I have to say, and this is just me again, I was quite surprised on the 13th of August when the Prime Minister announced that as of the 15th, which was the Saturday, hairdressers, barbers and beauty therapists have got to wear face masks as well as visors. I was really quite surprised at that. And I know it didn't go down particularly well in industry, and I do understand that. You know, I really do understand it. But I think the thing we've got to focus on is that whilst it must be, you know, pretty difficult. I mean, I go out, you know, into a shopping mall and I've got a mask on for an hour and I can't wait to get it off. So, you know, to be working in a face mask and a visor, you know, sort of 8 hours a day or whatever they're working, you know, that's not easy. But in my view, that's my opinion. But the government were adamant, and I did question them on this, they were absolutely adamant that safety comes first. And this is frontline ministers. Safety comes first and everything else sort of, if you like, is sort of behind that. So that came into law as of the 15th of August, as we all know. The thing with goggles, as you quite rightly said, that came out of the blue last Friday, I think it was last Friday.
Yeah.
I was really quite surprised about, because at that point, I think people had got used to the fact it was visors and face masks. And I'm thinking, well, why have they suddenly thrown this in to add a bit more confusion? Yeah. But yes, you're right. What they've said is that as of last Friday, if you choose not to wear a visor, you can wear goggles and a face mask. For me, I think I'd sooner still wear the visor, but that's only my opinion. But yes, the flexibility is there to do that. But you cannot wear one and not the other. I mean, you've got to wear a face mask and you've got to wear either a visor or goggles as of last Friday. You can't substitute one for the other. You can't say, well, you know, I wear a face mask, so forget the visor and the goggles. You know, it's got to be one of those two plus a face mask.
That everyone has to wear the type 2 face mask, and then it's
face masks, that's
choice
correct.
Between a face visor or a polycarbonate pair of goggles, or equivalent. And I guess people that have been struggling with the face visor, they might want to try the goggles.
Well, absolutely. And of course, the other thing that we have to be mindful of here, and this is quite tricky, is that in England, as of when this was first brought in on the 15th, and it would apply the same because of goggles, because you're simply substituting visor for goggles, there's no exemptions. In England, there is no exemptions. Right. So, you know, people that might have had a health condition that says they can't wear both. There were exemptions up until the 15th, but in England, from the 15th of August, there's no exemptions. That may well change, but at the moment, that's where it is. Now, I can't find anything definitive in the other devolved nations on this, but certainly in England, that's the position. And as you know, I sent you the direct wording from government, which exactly says that. So we have to be mindful of that as well.
And that's no exemptions for wearing the face mask and a visor or goggles.
Correct.
Yeah. So you can't switch one for the other, even if you do have a health condition or something.
No, you can switch those two.
Yeah, but not in terms of a visor and goggles or a face mask.
No, you have to wear a face mask and a visor with the other two. Goggles or a visor. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Now, whilst that might be very unpopular, and I completely understand if it is, at least it's enabling us to open and trade. And that's the key point here. If people don't follow these guidelines for all manner of reasons, because they find it difficult to wear, it's uncomfortable, all the rest of it, all of which is probably true. But if we don't follow that, then, you know, then somebody could walk in from trading standards and issue you with a warning or a fine or whatever else. So don't put yourself in that position. You know, we don't want that for the industry as well as for you as individuals.
Definitely. I think that's a very important point to make, isn't it, Keith, that it's for the good of the industry and to keep everything going as much as anything else to follow these rules.
Trade. I mean, as imperfect as it is from July the 4th, at least we're open.
Yeah.
You know, for 3-4 months before that, we were shut.
Exactly.
So, you know, let's follow the rules and make sure we can keep open and keep looking after our customers and obviously looking after our staff.
Definitely. And we had, so hopefully that answers your question, Maria, because she said that she spotted that you could wear goggles now. So we've tapped into that. Should we maybe now move on to track and trace?
Yeah.
Which is being made mandatory in England and Wales from the 18th of September, which is this Friday.
Well, we believe it will be. It's not been officially announced yet, but I'm 99.9% sure it will. Let's just try and talk through this because it is quite complicated. When we were first opened, in fact, all areas of hospitality and our industry, bear in mind we fall under something called close contact services. Okay, so and that's hairdressers, barbers, beauticians, you know, tattooists, nail bars. It even includes tailors and people like that, strangely, but it does. But we're not part of hospitality; they're in a different section. But so we're in close contact services. But when all this sort of very first happened, I've lost my thread now, Laura. What are we talking about?
We're talking about the track and trace. And
okay, sorry. Yeah. I've got so many things going on here. Right. Okay. When we first opened, we were told that we needed to take everybody's particulars when they came into the salon, if you recall. All right. Sort of contact details and so on. That has been happening, I think, pretty much throughout the industry and in other industries. If you go to a restaurant, they take your details, don't they? Your phone number, your name, and so on. And the purpose of that is to come back to you if they found anybody within the time you were there that was infected and proved positive, then they come back to you and let you know the situation. That we've been doing ever since July the 4th, pretty much.
And can I just stop you there, Keith, just because we did have a specific question relating to that. Tony said, so if you walk into a barber shop, do you need to take a phone number for track and trace?
Right, well, okay, if I just move on to that, all right? Yep. Just bear with me. Okay, let's talk about track and trace first, because otherwise we're going to get confused.
Yeah, this is his question was the track and trace.
Okay, right. Yes. So for the track and trace, if you walk into a barber's or hairdresser's, it's recommended that they take your details for track and trace purposes. Okay. Now it appears, and as I said, I'm 99.9% sure this is going to happen. As of Friday this week, which is the 18th, that will now become law. So before it was guidance, recommendation, advice, whatever you want to call it. As of this coming Friday, it will be law. So it will be mandated that you are obliged to do 5 things. Take the person's name, take their contact details, phone number, whatever. Record what date they came into the premises. Record what date they entered and record what time they entered and record what time they leave. Those are the 5 things they're asking for. So just to repeat that, just for clarity, it's the name of the person obviously coming into the business. It's their contact details, the date they came in and the time they arrived and the time they left. Those are the 5 things they're asking for.
Brilliant.
That's track and trace. That's track and trace.
Yes, that's track and trace. So to answer Tony's question, if you walk into a barber shop, do you need to take a phone number for track and trace?
Barber shops should be doing it anyway, but they will have to do it by Friday.
Perfect. And that is in England and Wales, the mandatory?
England and Wales, as far as I know. Again, it's not been officially stated yet, so I can't tell you, but I'm 99.9% sure, again, it's going to be in England and Wales. Again, Scotland, Northern Ireland, I haven't any information on that at all at the moment. Again, this is what makes it all so complicated.
But I guess in summary, it's probably safer to be doing this track and trace.
Well, it is. I mean, you know, I'm not too concerned about this one for the industry, and I've been concerned about a lot for our industry because I think most people have been doing it anyway. So it's just making it official now. So, you know, most salons and barbershops and beauty salons, since they were allowed to open, have been doing this anyway. So it's just making it official. It's making it law. So you haven't got to do anything different. It's just making sure you cover those 5 things.
Definitely. And then we've had a question from Natasha, who said, can you give us some more information about the code which clients can scan on a mobile phone to check into a hair salon or barber shop?
Well, again,
trace?
the coding is a little bit vague at the moment. The QR code, I assume we're speaking about. But my concern about this is that this is really, sorry, backtrack, Laura. This is not so much track and trace. This is now test and trace. All right. And I think we need to clarify that.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on test and trace
but
yet,
that's where the QR codes are.
Right.
Pretty much.
So maybe if we park that for a minute and keep that as separate.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm happy to come on to that. I think the problem with the coding is that the government are assuming everybody's got smartphones. That's the other issue here, and not everybody has got smartphones. I had a barber phone me yesterday, very concerned when he read the thing about the test and trace that I sent out, that he reckons 40% of his customers are sort of senior citizens and they won't have access to this. So, there's another layer of confusion there. So, but yes, come on to that in a minute.
Definitely. And we've just going back to the rule of 6. Sharon has said, does the rule of 6 mean we can only have 6 people in the salon at any one time, including staff?
Not to my knowledge, no. Because we don't have people coming in groups of 6. That would be completely unworkable. If that was so, that would be complete. I mean, you could have a salon with 8 staff, a fairly large salon where you can sort of socially distance. So I don't think that applies. Again, I'm sorry, but I can't give you my solemn word on that, but I don't think that will apply. And if it does, I've certainly not heard about it.
Brilliant. And then Tony has said, if you have asthma, you can get a medical note not to wear a mask.
In England, no, because of what I just said about the exemption. I mean, this came as a huge shock to me, I have to be honest with you. And you saw the document I sent to you.
Yes,
I mean, it clearly states no exemptions. But again, I can't say that for Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland because I'm not aware of that. But certainly in England, they have stated that. Because this was the question I was getting. Well, yes, it's all very well saying we've got to wear masks and visors, but I have a medical certificate of my doctor or one of those little card things that says I'm exempt. And when I looked into it, because my initial reaction would have been to say, yes, of course, you're exempt, so you don't have to do it. But when I looked into it, I found out exactly what I sent to you, that there are no exemptions in England.
No. Now,
I'm not saying I agree with that, but that's what the government is saying.
And then we have another great question before we move on to the Test and Trace app from, I hope I'm saying this right, NACO. Apologies if I've said your name wrong there. What do you do if you've had some symptoms like an ordinary cold and you're working in a hair salon or barber shop?
Well, you see, this is another really, really difficult area because, is a cold a symptom of COVID, right? That's the first thing. What they're saying is that what the government's saying is that if you have any symptoms that you could be related to COVID, you should immediately get a test, right? That's the first thing you should do. Now, that test, if it remains negative, but then you should get the test. If it's positive, obviously you've got to self-isolate. But then, obviously, what happens to the rest of the salon or the barbershop or whatever? Now, bearing in mind that when everybody leaves each individual workstation, end of the day, beginning of the day, everything's thoroughly deep cleaned, should be deep cleaned, hygiene, sanitized, etc. Hopefully, it won't have spread. But the whole point of this is if you've got symptoms of anything that you think could be COVID related, the first thing to do is get a test. Once you've had the test back, hopefully it's negative, so there's no issue. If it's positive, obviously then you inform the person that owns or runs the salon. And we need to get some clarity on what has to happen beyond that. But my knowledge at this point is you don't have to close the salon down, which would be awful. But I can't, again, 100% commit to that because the guidance doesn't give us that guidance that we're supposed to be doing. But I think the key here is get a test as quickly as possible, if you can, of course, because that's another big issue, isn't it?
Exactly. And until you have that test, should that member of staff stay home?
If you think it could be COVID related, I would suggest you should stay at home. Yes, I'm not saying that's ideal, Laura, at all. Yeah, I'm really not. But things like, I think the main things are sort of a progressive cough, lack of smell, lack of taste, and that type of thing are the ones that are sort of the key things that you might be concerned about. And obviously, if you had any breathing difficulties, I'm not totally sure if a cold is one of the big sort of indicators of COVID. I'm not sure on that. But if you do think there's a chance you've got it, then yes, you should stay at home and get a test, which is all, it's difficult for salons to manage.
Exactly, definitely. And we've had a couple more questions. We've had Sharon saying, my insurance won't cover even if people are exempt, so I have to say no to mask and no to a haircut.
Yeah, I can't get into insurance. That's a whole big issue. That has to be something you take up with your individual company or broker. It's just something. It's a whole minefield, Laura, at the moment. Insurance with this and what they won't. So I'm not being unhelpful here, but it's really something I'm not qualified to comment on.
And then we've had another question: are there medical exemptions for clients wearing face masks if a client can't wear a face mask for whatever health reason?
To my knowledge, not. However, you can actually ask them to remove it if you're doing certain sections around the ears, or if it was getting in the way of what you're doing. But to my knowledge, not. However, again, I'm afraid I can't give you a definitive on that.
Okay. And then Bridget has said, does a receptionist have to wear both the mask and the visor?
I would suggest yes.
Perfect.
Because you could argue they're not in such close contact, which they're not with customers. But I think for safety, and I think to show that everybody's sort of doing the best they can, I would personally say yes. It may not be the guidance on that, but I think they should do that. I mean, bearing in mind within our industry, Laurie, we work primarily at the back and the sides, don't we?
Yeah.
We don't get in front of the client, too much. I know for barbers with beard trimming and things like that, we do. But and that's working in the high risk zone, but we don't get into that pretty much. We sort of tend to focus, sides and back. So, the risk element is slightly less, I believe, than if you were working in the high risk zone on the front.
Definitely. Perfect. I think we're up to date with questions at the moment, and we've deliberately kept the COVID-19 app, which is Test and Trace, separate because it does get quite confusing with the name. So should we maybe now tap into the app, so to speak? The COVID-19 app, what it is, and how it will affect hairdressing salons and barber shops moving forward.
Well, this app, it's called Introducing the NHS COVID-19 app, will be available to use as on the 24th of September, which is a week on Thursday. I think the key thing to say at the moment is that it's not mandatory, it is voluntary. And you can load it and you can delete it or take it off at your will. It's another way that the government want us, the public, all industries, to try and support them to actually stem the increase in rises of coronavirus that is going on, the infections at the moment. It's only in Wales and England. Wales choose to call it something different, which not much, but it's called the Test and Trace in England, NHS Test and Trace in England, and the NHS Test, Trace and Protect in Wales. So they've added a word in there. And it is using this QR code, which does meet legal requirements. I sent something out to all our members yesterday about it. I'm happy to send it to you. In fact, I think I did send it to you yesterday.
I think you have now, yes, yeah.
So it might be a good idea to load that on your site, HJ. So any listeners or anybody can look at it. It's fairly easy to read. It's going to support the track and trace. It's an addition to it, the test and trace. And if you read it through, it's not complicated, but it's quite lengthy, and it will go through everything that you need to know. I mean, one of the things I think that would be important, because I know there are some people that are concerned about this. If I just load it. Sorry, it's a bit slow. There is a section on page. It talks what you do if you have symptoms and all the rest of it, what you do with the app, what happens with a positive test result, and so on. But it does also tap into your personal privacy and data, which I know a lot of people are quite concerned about. And just to sort of alleviate any fears with your listeners, the data is safe and secure. The app cannot be used to identify you, to track you, to check if you're self-isolating, or by law enforcement people. So it is secure. So I believe, because it was something that I think a lot of people were concerned about, all your information's out there for everybody to look at and everybody to view. And we all know how susceptible we are to sort of people gaining access to our information and our data these days. So as I say, your personal privacy and data is protected if you choose to do it. And I would suggest have a look at it, see what you think. If you can support it, I would urge you to do so, because it's another cog in the wheel to help protect, staff, customers, and everybody else. But it is a bit more work. There is something else to do there, which I understand. People already have to contend with, the workload, of course, and the extra cost of PPE, sanitising, and everything else. So, have a look at it and see for yourself. I think that's probably the easiest answer. So it's not track and trace, it's test and trace. Track and trace, as we talked about, will become law, we believe, by Friday this week. Test and trace is the app which is being launched the following Thursday to everyone. It's not just for our industry, it's for everybody.
And members of the public can use the app as well.
Absolutely. Anybody can use it. But I think have a look at it for yourselves would be much easier than sort of just trying to go through it bit by bit. It's very easy to understand. It's done in quite a clear, sort of gives a lot of clarity to it. It's not confusing, which makes a nice change. So have a look at it yourselves, I would suggest, on that.
Brilliant, that's fantastic. And we just had one more question before we wrap up this session, because we're running out of time now. What if this is going back to the receptionist question? Pauline has said, what if the receptionist has a screen as well as the visor? Do they still need to wear a mask?
I would say, I don't think there's any firm guidance on it. I would say probably not, because they're not actually active working. But again, I don't make the law. As far as I know, there's nothing prescriptive for that. But if there's a screen in front of them and they've got a visor, they'd probably be okay, I would think. But, they do talk about in a hairdresser's and a barber's and a beauty salon, you should wear masks and visors. So, for me, I would always say, take it to the extreme, all right? Wear a mask and a visor, even if you've got a screen.
Yeah.
That's if it was my salon, that's what I would do. Because then I know I've covered everything.
Brilliant.
And you might think it's over the top, and some people I know do think that, and they may well be right. But nevertheless, the more we do to protect our staff and our customers, the more visibly we're being seen for our customers, that they know we're ensuring their safety while they're in our salons. Hopefully, the better our business will be, and hopefully we won't have any problems with being sort of shut down or anything like that in the future. Which I personally don't think will happen, but who knows.
And obviously as well, clients now, they don't just look for a salon based on how good the stylist is. They want a salon where they feel safe.
They do. And I think that's a good point to finish on, Laura. The more safe you can make your business appear to be, the more likely the customers to come to you to get their hair, beauty treatments or whatever done.
Definitely.
And I think that's really critical. I think that's critical.
It's a new marketing point, isn't it? A sales point.
It is. Yeah, it's a new point. Yeah, I would say point of difference. It's not, because everybody's doing the same. But I think as a customer, if you were going to a salon, you want to know they've taken every precaution they can to make your visit safe and secure. And I think that really draw that back to everything. That is what it's all about.
Definitely. Well, this has been a really fascinating session, Keith. I think you've answered a lot of questions during this session.
I'm sorry I couldn't give clarity on everything, but unfortunately some of the clarity just isn't there.
No, exactly.
And I apologise for that, but I'm not going to tell you something that I don't believe is right. So
definitely. But it's great to see so many people asking those questions and wanting to make sure that they're doing the right thing. And that's the key thing, isn't it?
If anything comes through, you can always email me or contact me anyway if there's anything else.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you so much again, Keith. No, it's been a great session. If anyone did want to reach out to you directly,
please do. Yeah, please do.
Brilliant.
I'll give you my email address. It's Keith Conniford. That's KeithConniford. Keith Conniford @haircouncil.org.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Keith. So he's very kindly offered his email there if you did have any specific questions that you weren't able to share during this session live. I'm sure you're spending a lot of time answering questions at the moment, Keith.
No, I would say 90% of my time, actually.
So please do watch the session first, because your question might have been answered during this session.
Yeah, it is frustrating when you can answer pretty much most things, but some of these variables are very difficult to get a perspective on, and they vary for different industries. That's the other thing.
Exactly, definitely.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me on. I hope it's helped everyone.
Brilliant. We've loved it, Keith. Thank you, and I'm sure we'll be getting you back again as things change.
Well, I'm happy to do that. Happy to do that, Laura, because we will have some more changes, inevitably, I'm sure.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you again, Keith, for giving up your time for us.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.